Well, welcome back. I want to come to this point about intolerance in the culture because a number of people have been writing this. I'm going to refer to a recent Mail and Guardian article. Barney Pitjana, the rector of the College of Transfiguration, once upon a time, I think the rector of UNISA, wrote recently, South Africa is desperately in need of a government that guides the public debate towards a truthful understanding of itself and the possibility of constructing a desired future for the common good. The moral depravity of the Zuma leadership causes us to ask deep questions about the direction the country is taking. What is your blunt assessment of our health now?
Well, I think if you look at it entirely as a government and state-centric thing, it's poor. But if you look at it as the whole of society...
So you agree with Dr. Jordan that we've got a vibrant civil...
Well, notwithstanding the government, not because of them, the government has been, I think, in many cases very authoritarian, but I think the society as a whole has pushed back quite heavily against that in many key areas. And it's quite true. The example Dr. Jordan gave of the Protection of State Information Bill, that was a 3-year process of engagement. And to the commendation of the majority party, you allowed it to happen, and that bill was vastly improved. I can mention 20 other pieces of legislation which were shoved through Parliament with barely going through even the outlines of a proper process which went in the other direction. So for every big gain, there are a lot of negatives.
Listening to you, see, he doesn't mind if I interrupt him. Listening to you...
I'm so used to it.
Yeah, I know that's good. Good. He gets testy, you don't. The question is that if you now were making an assessment now, 20 years later, you write on these things, should I be anxious as an ordinary South African citizen saying we've done well for 20 years? I accept you guys are saying so, he's not, but let's leave it there for the moment. But now I should be really worried.
I think there are deep causes for concern. I think there are a lot of orange lights flashing, which are moving rapidly into the red zone.
Give me one or two of them.
I think corruption can engulf the entire state, and I think if it is left unchecked...
Why have you said nothing about the state of education? Only Professor Mangcu.
Well, I think he's right about that, and I mean, but that's a question of government service delivery failure. So we spend 6% of our GDP on education. It's the highest percentage of GDP of any developing country, and the results I read the other day are equivalent to those achieved in Yemen, which is a failed state. Because we've allowed far too much power to the SA Democratic Teachers Union.
Your ex-colleague in the DA, Dr. Bahrain, I know he's there probably before you got there. He's written a book saying that we're almost a failed state.
Well, I think on that basis we are. But look, I again have to go back to the fact that South Africa is a diverse place, that it's a complex society, and that it has more parts to it than simply the government and the state sector.
All right. Professor, how do you respond to Dr. Pitjana's... I mean, he's really being extremely critical, saying...
He's right. He's absolutely right. I mean, you know, what you need in any society, right, is that ability for the society to reflect on itself. Now, as I said earlier on, if you don't have the intellectual infrastructure to actually do that, then you're going to go on a particular path, a self-destructive path. Like basically, what I'm saying is, I'm talking about a collective failure of imagination in our society.
How do we get one then, in your view? What would you do if I appointed you president tomorrow morning?
What I would do...
Not that I have the right to do so, I'm just hypothetical. Yeah?
What you need to do is to get people excited around ideas, new ideas about how you construct society. And you do that in an inclusive manner. But you should have a substantive vision of the society. You know, it's not merely a matter of, you know, you can just go and vote every 5 years. That's important, right? But what I'm saying is you need to give people a sense of identity.
But Dr. Jordan, for example, says, as I take him, we've got a vibrant civil society. People do shout the odds. There's a robust... Stop me if I'm wrong. I'm happy if you interrupt me.
Go ahead.
Good, thank you. I must have been courteous, but the question, I've got, now that's all happening. You, for example, write your columns. There are quite a few people like you.
To be quite frank, we had to fight for those spaces. Actually, there was a time.
But that's not the government's fault, that's the newspapers.
No, there was a time of great intolerance when President Mbeki was president. And we, as individuals, had to fight for that space. So let's not pretend here that, you know, it's all been hunky-dory.
So let me ask you...
There was a time...
This is again hyperbole.
There was a time when actually to speak right, was quite costly in so many ways.
All right.
So it's a space that people have had to fight for.
Well, what do you want to interrupt him? Carry on.
This is hyperbole again. You see, when Thabo Mbeki was president, I was a columnist too at that time. You know, I was in the backbenches then.
I read you too,
and
as well as
I
you
was I was a columnist then. I used to write what I thought. Right, I was in Mbeki's party, served on the same national executive working committee with him. He never once said to me, "Why did you say that?"
Are you suggesting that people were not intimidated under the Mbeki era to shut up?
Look, intimidation at the end of the day is, how you respond. Right? If you are intimidated,
he said it took a Jacob Zuma to stop that.
And that's why we are in the position with trouble we're in right now.
If you now are looking down the benefit of 20 years, over the next 10 years, are you positive that our constitutional democracy is going to be strengthened and enriched?
I'm pretty sure. Look, vigilance is the price of liberty, one American said, right? And the quality of your democracy is dependent on the citizens, always.
All right.
Not dependent on a government, it's dependent on its citizens. What we have created in South Africa is an environment for the first time in the history of this country where the citizens actually can determine how the country is run without fear of favor.
I got you. I'm sorry. Yes. What?
Yes, I think our constitutional settlement is in danger if there are men and women who believe it should be undercut or undermined, and some of them in the ruling party do believe that. And if we make bad appointments for critical public positions, we will then undermine the foundations that were built so assiduously 20 years ago. If, on the other hand, society and civil society keeps reasserting itself, then indeed we will be on a better path. But I think it's finely balanced, and I wouldn't, relax and sort of go to bed for the next 10 years and assume to look after itself.
Professor, the last word is yours.
We do our country a disservice by putting our heads in the sand. It's all clear that we're heading south. Okay, things are not going right. There's a 200 million rand house that's being put up for the president. Things are not going right in our country. Young people have no sense of hope or vision. And it's not going to help for us to say, you know what, it's going to be fine for the next decade and continue on the same path.
I've got to close, unfortunately. And Dr. Jordan, of course, suggested I interrupted too much, but I haven't said anything. Let me try to summarize the debate over this way. 20 years. Go back 20 years, and I think it is fair to say, is it not, that, goodness, we have got a constitutional democracy with a constitutional court, regular elections, a relatively vibrant civil society. When I was talking to a group of students where I was teaching at NYU about this particular program which they'd found out, they said, we could never have a program like this in the United States. People are not interested in this stuff. We can, and we do. The question, however, is that it's right. You don't just win a constitutional democracy, you have to earn it, and that earning is a journey. And we've heard different views about where we've gone and where we're going to. So the one question that must emerge is if we're not vigilant and we don't safeguard it with the care it deserves, well then maybe in 20 years' time we'll have a much more unanimously gloomy view than we've had to date. But of course, given the different views, it's for you to judge for yourself. Goodbye.
News that moves. ENCA.com.